The storm slammed into Colorado Springs like a living thing. Wind screaming through the narrow streets of the forgotten neighborhood on Maple Street. Marcus Hale stood at 32, with nothing left but the shell of a man. The duplex was a decaying 1970s two-unit building peeling paint, creaky floors that announced every step, drafty windows that whistled at night, and a heater that rattled like it was fighting for its last breath. Inside, the air smelled of old wood and quiet defeat. Garage sale furniture filled the rooms, a lumpy sofa that sagged in the middle, mismatched chairs around a scarred table, lamps that flickered when the wind rose hard enough, no photographs on the walls, no personal traces, just survival. He sat at the kitchen table under a single dim bulb, bills spread before him like open wounds. Electric $120 overdue, water $85, final notice, rent due in days. His freelance checks arrived late, if they arrived at all. Once, in Denver, he had run his own architecture firm, modern homes with clean lines, office spaces that breathed light, a community center that drew local praise. He had a team, downtown meetings over steak, the solid feeling of building something real. Then the lawsuit came. A client blamed design flaws for issues caused by their own cheap contractors. The battle lasted over a year. Court fees, lost contracts, reputation shredded. The firm collapsed. He walked away with crushing debt and the hollow knowledge that everything he had built was gone. Loneliness was not just silence. It was a deep, physical hunger, a raw ache in the chest for warmth against his skin, for eyes that looked at him and stayed, for the simple proof that someone might want him close without calculating the cost. Nights stretched long, the fridge humming its lonely song, the distant highway traffic mocking his isolation. He rubbed his temples, feeling the familiar pressure building toward breaking. The doorbell rang just before 10 p.m. Sharp and insistent over the roar of rain that had turned the street into a rushing river, he hesitated at the peephole. Two young women stood huddled on the porch, drenched and shivering. The taller one had blonde hair plastered flat against her face. The shorter had dark curls clinging to her cheeks like wet ribbons. Lightning cracked overhead, illuminating the raw fear in their eyes as they glanced back at the dark, flooded road. He knew later they had knocked on 17 doors before his. 17 rejections in the storm. Caution screamed inside him. This was not the safest neighborhood, but something deeper tugged harder than fear. The sight of them soaked and vulnerable pulled at the hunger he tried so hard to bury. He unlatched the chain and opened the door a crack. Come in. Just to use the phone. They stepped inside quickly, water pooling on the worn linoleum. Cold air rushed in with them, carrying the sharp scent of rain. Marcus grabbed 2 old towels from the hall closet and handed them over. Amanda's fingers brushed his as she took hers. The contact was brief, but it lingered in his nerves like a spark against dry tinder. Samantha accepted the second towel with hands that trembled from cold. Up close, they were in their mid-20s. Amanda carried sharp, poised features even while dripping. Samantha had softer, wider eyes that darted around the sparse room as if assessing safety. The landline is dead, he said after trying it, the receiver offering only crackling static that mirrored the thunder outside. Cell signal is gone too. He turned on the old gas stove, the burner ticking loudly in the quiet kitchen. I'll heat water. Hot chocolate. They nodded, voices shaky with exhaustion and gratitude. The small kitchen felt suddenly smaller, warmer, yet electrically charged with their presence. When he handed Amanda her steaming mug, their eyes met across the steam. Hers dropped first to the liquid, then lifted again, heavier this time. Carrying something unspoken, Marcus felt his own breathing change shallower, more aware of the space between their bodies. Samantha perched on the edge of one mismatched chair, her knee positioned close enough to his that moving away would have been a deliberate statement. Neither of them shifted. The silence grew thick, the storm raging outside, while inside, the air pressed with restrained tension. It's not safe to go back out there tonight, Marcus said, his voice low. The roads are flooding. You can take the pull-out sofa in the living room. It's dry, nothing fancy. Amanda's gaze held his a moment longer than necessary. Are you sure? We don't want to impose. He wasn't sure. Every defense he had built since the bankruptcy walls of solitude, caution, emotional distance, felt tested by their nearness. But the thought of sending them back into the rain felt crueler than the risk of letting two strangers close. He prepared the sofa bed, unfolding it with sheets and blankets faded from too many washes. As they helped, their shoulders came close while smoothing fabric. The faint scent of wet hair and rain mixed with the warmth of their body. Conversations started haltingly. He found himself sharing pieces he rarely voiced. The firm's collapse, the lawsuit that took everything, the move to this cheap rental and freelance survival. They listened with quiet empathy, no pity, only understanding. Amanda spoke softly of their road trip after college marketing at UCLA for her, art history at Stanford for Samantha. Cut short by the sudden storm. The heater groaned in the background. Lightning flashed across their faces in brief, stark bursts. Marcus sat in the armchair across from the sofa, positioned close enough that when Samantha leaned forward slightly, her hand rested inches from his on the shared arm space. The air thickened further. Breathing fell into an unconscious rhythm. Desire flickered low in his chest, an urgent, unwelcome hunger for touch, for recognition, for the warmth of being wanted. He pushed it down hard, jaw tight, telling himself this was only shelter. Sleep came uneasy that night in his small bedroom. Through the thin walls, he could hear their soft breathing, the occasional shift of blankets. The duplex no longer felt completely empty, and that awareness itself carved a new ache into the old loneliness. Morning arrived with pale, washed clean light. Puddles outside shimmered like scattered mirrors under a blue sky. Marcus made a simple breakfast: scrambled eggs, toast from the discount loaf, coffee in chipped mug. They ate together at the small table, knees brushing beneath it in the cramped space. Amanda's hair was tied back in a loose ponytail, still slightly damp at the ends. Samantha's fingers wrapped around her mug with quiet care. The ordinary domesticity hurt with its intimacy. Warmth he had been starving for. Closeness that felt both comforting and dangerous. After the meal, he offered to drive them the short mile to their stalled black BMW on the shoulder of the quiet road. He popped the hood, diagnosed the snapped alternator belt, and called the local tow truck while they waited in the crisp air. Amanda reached into her pocket and handed him a small embossed card. Their fingers touched again. This time the contact lingered in the moment. Her eyes met his, dropped briefly, then returned with heavier meaning. The space between their bodies felt deliberately maintained. If you ever need anything, call she said softly. He watched the tow truck pull away with their car in tow, then drove back to the duplex. The indent their bodies had left on the sofa bed remained visible for hours. The faint trace of rain-scented warmth lingered in the air like a taunt to his returning solitude. For 2 weeks, the old routine clawed its way back. Long hours hunched over drafting software on his old laptop, dodging creditor calls, sketching small projects that paid just enough. The card stayed tucked in his wallet, untouched. Yet at night, the hunger felt sharper, awakened and restless. Then the doorbell rang again on a crisp fall morning. Marcus opened it to find Amanda and Samantha, now dry, polished, composed, and their father, Victor Sterling. The man was in his late 50s, silver hair neatly styled, wearing a tailored gray suit that spoke of quiet authority. He carried a leather briefcase and an aura that made the small living room feel even smaller. Victor extended a firm hand. Marcus, I've heard a great deal about you. My daughters told me what happened that night. 17 doors. You were the only one who opened. Marcus stood rigid, old defenses rising. It was nothing special. Amanda stepped slightly closer, her shoulder brushing the edge of his arm as she spoke. It was to us. Her voice was low, her eyes finding his with that familiar heavy return dropping, then holding longer. The air between them thickened instantly. Samantha positioned herself nearby, her presence warm at his other side. Victor outlined the opportunity without flourish. Sterling Development Group was launching a major mixed-use project in Portland residential towers, retail spaces, integrated green areas. They needed a senior project architect, 6-figure starting salary, full benefits, relocation assistance, stock options. Victor had reviewed Marcus's old portfolio publicly available work. He praised the vision in the Denver Community Center, the clean innovation, but more than the designs, he valued the man who helped 2 strangers in a storm with no expectation of gain. Marcus felt the offer press against every scar. The hunger surged recognition, purpose, the dangerous comfort of being seen and wanted for who he was, not what he had lost. Amanda's gaze lingered in the small space. Neither of them stepped back. Breathing changed subtly, the restraint a slow burn beneath calm surfaces. Victor left a thick folder of project specifications, timelines, and printouts of Marcus's past designs. Take the weekend. Call me Monday. This isn't charity. It's good business built on good character. As they prepared to leave, late afternoon light slanted golden across the porch. Amanda turned back at the threshold. They stood closer than necessary for goodbye. Sunset warmed her hair and cast long shadows. Silence stretched between them, heavy and thick. Her breath brushed warm against the cooling air. Hands remained at their sides, but the deliberate space pulsed with tension. Eyes locked, dropped to lips for a fraction too long, then returned. Words formed on her lips. Marcus, that night, I keep thinking about how you then died unfinished. The ache was not in the coming separation, but in how near they stood to crossing an invisible line, how easily the closeness could tilt into something more, and how both chose restraint. Samantha waited quietly by the car. Watching, Marcus swallowed the urge that rose in his chest, the raw hunger for connection making the distance painful. Drive safe, he said, voice rough with everything unsaid. She nodded once. Their gazes held one final, lingering beat before she turned away. The door closed. Marcus leaned against it, heart pounding. The folder lay on the table like a map to a different life. The duplex felt charged, the old loneliness no longer abstract, but alive with the memory of their warmth. Staying emotionally distant had become harder than risking the pain of attachment. Restraint now carried its own sharp ache. He called Monday morning. I'm in. The transition happened with surprising efficiency. Sterling Development handled the logistics, packing his few belongings, shipping his drafting table, securing a modern apartment in Portland's Pearl District with open layout, clean lines, and views of the Willamette River. It was a universe away from the creaky duplex on Maple Street. His first weeks at the firm were a whirlwind of meetings, introductions, and immersion into the ambitious project. He was given a corner office with floor-to-ceiling window. Victor treated him as a peer from the start. Marcus poured himself into the work, his sketches gaining depth from the hard lessons of past failure. Debts began to disappear from his accounts. Nights grew quieter in a different way, but the hunger remained, now focused and awakened by the two women who had first tested his walls. One rainy evening, several weeks later, a knock sounded at his apartment door. Amanda stood outside, soaked from a sudden downpour that echoed their original stormy night. Water streamed from her hair and clothes. He let her in, without hesitation. The old caution long softened. "You're drenched again," he said, voice low. She offered a small, tired smile. "I was nearby. Thought I'd see how the new life is treating you." He handed her a clean towel. "Bathroom is down the hall. I'll find something dry for you to change into." She disappeared into the bathroom, leaving the door slightly ajar. A thin, fragile barrier that did nothing to dull the heightened awareness. Marcus waited in the living room, every sense attuned. He heard the rustle of wet fabric being peeled away, the slow pauses as she moved, the soft slide of dry clothes. The knowledge of her proximity without full visibility made the air invasive. Bodily charged, he pictured the line of her shoulder, the curve where neck met collarbone, then forced them into height, the images down. Jaw clenched. When she emerged wearing one of his oversized shirts, the fabric hanging soft and loose on her frame, hair damp and loose around her face, the tension thickened further. She sat on the couch beside him, their thighs brushing in the shared space. Neither adjusted away. Shared body heat radiated between them. Conversation drifted from project details to deeper waters. His lingering doubts about whether he truly deserved this second chance. The fear that the old wounds would reopen. Unexpectedly, tears rose hot and silent in his eyes. She stayed seated close, her arm resting lightly against his, knuckles grazing the fabric of his sleeve in a restrained gesture that offered comfort but stopped short. Their limbs were nearly touching. Breathing fell into shallow sync. The moment stretched unbearably. The nearness felt psychological and physical. The emotional exposure raw, warmth from her body pressed against the edges of his restraint. Desire pulsed urgent beneath the calm surface, threatening control. She did not pull away. The silence spoke volumes. The shared hunger for connection, the fear of letting walls crumble completely, the painful choice to hold the line even as closeness tested every defense. Healing flickered in that vulnerability, not through crossing boundaries, but through allowing her to witness the depth of his loneliness without turning away. Time moved forward. The Portland project advanced under shifting skies. Designs took shape with sustainable materials and thoughtful community integration. One late afternoon at the construction site, as crews packed up tools and golden light began to fade toward deep dusk, Amanda found Marcus standing alone at the boundary fence. They stood close, shoulders aligned. The city hummed distant below. Sunset painted the scene in lingering warm hues, gilding edges of steel and her features. Conversation began lightly, then fell into thick, meaningful silence. Their bodies subtly adjusted, maintaining the deliberate space that crackled with tension. Eyes met, dropped, returned heavy with unsaid meaning. Hands rested near each other on the rail, inches apart. Yet electrically aware, neither stepped back. Breathing changed deeper at first, then held. Words started on both sides, only to be abandoned. The ache built toward near surrender, the pressure of wanting warmth, recognition, and to be wanted so intensely that staying distant hurt more than the risk of pain. Light dimmed slowly around them. Still they lingered at the boundary, gazes locked in the fading glow. The restraint felt almost unbearable. Desire contained but urgent, pulsing beneath every calm word and unfinished gesture. The emotional walls trembled under the weight of prolonged closeness. Finally, Marcus spoke, voice low and rough. "We should head back before it's completely dark." Amanda nodded once. Her eyes said everything the words had not. They walked side by side into the twilight, shoulders occasionally brushing in the soft light, the line between them uncrossed, yet forever altered by how close they had come to crossing it. Months unfolded. Marcus thrived in his role. His contributions earned quiet respect within the firm. Victor became a steady mentor. Amanda and Samantha remained constants in subtler ways. Occasional shared site walk, thoughtful conversations over coffee, moments that continued to test boundaries without breaking them. The old duplex on Maple Street receded into memory, but its lesson endured. One stormy night, one act of opening a door against caution and loneliness, had rippled outward in ways he could never have predicted. Loneliness did not vanish completely. It transformed, softened, shared in the restrained glances, the prolonged silences, the deliberate nearness that made every moment of restraint feel like its own form of intimate connection. Desire remained contained, urgent beneath calm surfaces, turning each near surrender into proof that he was no longer invisible. The buildings rose steadily in Portland, solid and visionary, and in the careful, aching space between Marcus and Amanda, between past wounds and future possibility, something deeper and steadier took root. Healing arrived not in grand release, but in the quiet, invasive courage of staying close when every instinct once warned to pull away. One small choice in the storm had planted seeds for a life rebuilt, one deliberate, emotionally exposed step at a time.